All right, we're going to talk a little bit about argumentation, chapter 14 in your textbook. Now, this is preparation for your final report for the semester. You're going to be writing an argumentative research paper. Argumentative, for those of you who've been in the my face-to-face class, you've heard me say this, but for the rest of you, you have to make sure that whatever topic you select is one that is truly arguable. I have always had a great love for cream of wheat. I like cream of wheat, but I have this one little feature I like. I like slightly lumpy cream of wheat because I like a little bit more texture in it. Now, that's not something that you and I can argue about. You either like it or you don't like it, and there's not much that you can say to convince me otherwise. So we can't argue that topic. What can we do with arguing? We find a debatable topic, a position, a belief, a conclusion. You take a stand, and it has to be supported by evidence. And what you are going to do in your essay or your research paper is to make your reader, or excuse me, make your writer read through what you've got, and at the end they won't necessarily say, okay, I agree with everything you said, but instead what they will do is say, okay, you got a point. And that's all you have to really do to make an argument paper work for you or for your classmate. When you are talking about persuasion in general, persuasion and argumentation, they are not exactly the same, but they are still terms that you need to use. Persuasion is a general term that talks about how you influence your audience. There are two types of appeals. One is called pathos, meaning you appeal to emotion. And then the other type is logos, where you appeal to the writer based on logic. Or in the other format, finally, ethos, is it ethical? We'll make your appeal based on whether or not it is ethical. Argumentation is the appeal to your logic system. And you're going to take your reader through a series of statements and convince them that you have some degree of validity. How can you support it? You have to make sure that the points that you are using to prove your point come from good sources. Statistics can be okay, but you have to make sure where the statistics are coming from. For years and years and years, we used to have on the side packages of cigarettes, it said they may be harmful to you. Well, at that time, the big tobacco companies were paying companies to go out and research whether tobacco did indeed cause cancer. But on the other hand, they were usually giving people money to do other research. So I'll give you $100,000 to do your research if you will do this research on tobacco. And of course, we're not going to want to come out with the answer that, oh yes, it does cause cancer. Instead, what we want to do is we want the 100,000. So we're going to say it might cause it. While appeal to emotion is helpful, it's probably not your best format, because one of those things that people will, when you've got someone up in front and they're talking and they convince you something and you go, oh, that makes all the sense in the world. You get the emotional appeal. When you get home and you stop and think about it, you go, oh, wait a minute. Now that I can see some sides to that. Make sure that you don't get misleading sentences. To start out our paper, we're going to choose a topic. And once you can go in our TCC library site, and there is a section there that allows you to choose topics. You'll go into research and it will give you research paper topics. And you can find all kinds of open-minded things. And if you have a look at those videos that I put in on topics, they all provide you with things that we could argue about and determine. I do ask that we avoid drugs. Just read the topic before, not really interested in reading it again. So rather than that, select something more interesting. Sports, you can't, again, you can't convince me that football's the best game out there if I'm not a football fan. So making sure that, with sports, it's kind of hard to find ideas that you can actually work with. You might want to say, in college football, a lot of companies provide a lot of money to colleges. So shouldn't we be providing more economic help to the football players? That might be something you could argue. Once you have your topic set up, you want to go with your thesis statement. Now, your thesis statement will help you to figure out whether you've got a good question or not. So you might make the thesis statement, education is the best way to address the problem of increased drug use among teenagers. This says that there's an increased drug use problem with teenagers and that there is a possible solution to it. Now, one of the things that you can do with this is to, have a look at the opposite, the antithesis. Education is not the best way to address the problem of increased drug use. If we look and see that there are two distinct sides to it, then we probably have something that is arguable. Your audience, your classmates are going to be looking at this. So, our classmates range from, our youngest is 17 and I think our oldest is in the 40s. So we have students who come from Japan, the Philippines. We have students who are Muslim, we have students who are Christian, we have students who are agnostic, we have students who are atheist. We have students who belong to other religions, perhaps Buddhist. And so you have to be aware of all these different sides as you're planning your argument, making sure that you're going to have an argument that all these people will understand. All right, you need to make sure you start going out and gathering evidence. But before you do that, take a moment and on just a piece of paper, write down everything that you already know about your topic. And by doing that, you can later on at the end, as you're writing your paper, you'll know what you didn't already know. Okay, so that you'll know to document those things that you didn't know. We're going to look for evidence. We're going to look for facts. We're going to look for opinions that support you. Again, go to the TCC library, and you will find in the TCC library there is a section on research that will help you find information about your topic. Facts are statements that people generally agree are true and can be verified. Fewer people were killed in the U.S. in 2014 than in 1975. There are also facts accompanied by opinions. For example, you could offer an opinion. You personally could offer an opinion about whether cars are safer or not. am I going to really believe your opinion, or does your opinion really spring? Why should I believe you? You'd have to come up with some reason that you were supportable. On the other hand, suppose that the person making the statement, offering an opinion, is David Zuby, who is with the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. And he, of course, has more detail, and so his opinion is going to be more valid than mine or yours. Not all opinions are equally convincing. On television, you're always seeing the commercials that tell you, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV, to try to convince you that you want to buy their product, or the product that they're advertising. But that does not necessarily mean that you're going to believe them. You have to look at who the reader is and why we're going to trust their work. As you go through, your evidence has to be relevant. I wouldn't want to give you car safety rules. What was it? We bought a car, or my father bought a car in 1962. And guess what? He put seat belts in it as an addition. Seat belts did not just automatically come with the car, so obviously safety in the 60s are going to be different than safeties in the 70s, the 80s, or even today. You have to also make sure that the argument, how have we set up our studies and such. If we've got a study, we want a range of opinions, and I could go over to let's say Norfolk Academy and do a survey, but my survey is not really going to work well simply because of the fact that all of these students come from about the same economic level, the same basic sort of households, and so they're going to have very similar opinions. If I went across the interstate there and went to Lake Taylor, I would obviously get a different result because it's a different group of people. So making sure that your information is going to work for the typical person, make sure there's enough evidence. If I did a survey of my English 111 class at 11 o'clock and no one else, the information I find is going to be true for them, but not for anyone else. I can't say that that's representative of the whole of the school, but rather just representative of my class. You will need to, as you're preparing your papers, make sure that you're documenting what you are talking about. And remember the internal documentation in your paper. This was written according to, or include the page numbers or information about your source. That documentation helps you to avoid plagiarism. And you remember we talked about this last paper. You have to document if you quote someone. You have to document if you paraphrase someone. That is to say, put it in your own words. And it has to be documented if you summarize something. So all of those have to be documented. Things that you don't have to document would be common knowledge. The first president of the United States was George Washington. You have to make sure that if the paper that you're writing on happens to be an area that you are an expert in, make sure that your teacher knows that you have worked for 20 years as a car mechanic, and so you have specialized information, and so this is going to not require as much documentation from you. Always make sure that you acknowledge that there's an opposite side and you can't ignore it. And you have to be able to refute some of their strongest points, making your case as strong as you possibly can. Sometimes you're going to have to look at your opponent's argument, and there may be one or two points that you look at and you say, okay, I concede that point. However, and then you can go on. All right, we're going to stop for here, and we'll pick up in a few minutes to talk about understanding different formats of argumentation.